Hey y'all, welcome back. This is Just Plain Fun, and I am your host, MJ. And as you can probably tell from what's in front of us, we're going to be talking about the Compass Plane today, the 113, at least as Stanley numbered it. And that's what I'm going to talk about mostly, almost exclusively, is the Stanley number 113 Compass Plane, with an emphasis on usability as far as knowing what to look for when you're shopping for a compass plane. And then, of course, it wouldn't be a Just Plain Fun video without talking about parts and what you're looking for there. Not going to talk about the type study as much, although you can see part of the book there that is arguably the best type study out there. So I'll just touch on a couple of highlights regarding the type study, and then like I said, we're going to talk mostly about usability for those few of you that actually will use a compass plane on a project or 2 or 10 in your lifetime. Other than, it's just a cool plane to own, and they're awesome to have, and they can make a great conversation piece. But if we're being honest, not a whole lot of people actually use these, especially not in their day-to-day use, unless you're building wooden boats. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first thing that I want to talk about is one thing that people consistently seem to get confused on is thinking that their compass plane or their number 113 is a type 1. So this right here is the best indicator, at least that I've found, that the plane is in fact a type 1. So when you look at that little dude right there, when it's sticking out on the side, the little dovetail as they call it, when that's sticking out on the side, that's a strong indicator that it's a number 1. And you can see how it's kind of grooved, and that's so that in the path of travel, when this gear opens all the way up, it can maximize how far it opens. So if you don't have that little gear on the outside like that, then you don't have a type 1. Excuse me, like that. Then you don't have a type 1. There's a couple of other clues that your plane is a type 1 other than that. And those include the blade right here. If it has 2 different attachments, so one that goes into the chip breaker there, and then this additional attachment that goes in the chip breaker, then that's how you know also that it's a type 1. And I say that because on the type 2s, as you can see, they went away from that design. See, type 2 through 7, so it's just the single screw, and that's how you know. And then, as you can see here, well, that's type 3. But type 2, the dovetail keyway no longer has cutout, but is flush with the sides of the body casting. So you get the idea there, so you know whether it's type 1 or type 2. And by the way, source document here, Stanley Rule and Level Company number 113. It's by Jeff Warner and then approved by Roger K. Smith. So hopefully they don't mind, especially Mr. Warner doesn't mind me showing this book. If anything, it'll probably generate sales, because I'm pretty sure you can go on eBay and actually pick this up. That's where I got mine, and it'll get shipped to you from the UK. And it is the best source for typing and for learning more about the number 113. But what gave me the idea for this video actually was I was having a conversation with a potential customer about, and they were looking just for advice about compass planes in general. What's the best one to buy? What's the best one to use? And if I'm being honest, I don't have a whole ton of experience with using them, but I do have enough to at least form an educated opinion. So this right here is one of the older style. So when you see the knob on the side right here, or the dial rather, that's what actually moves your blade from left to right. So this is your lateral adjust here on the older style. And then this is the lever cap on the older style. So it slides in the groove here, as you can see. And then the blade or the iron is different, just like you saw in the pictures. This is all on the older style of compass plane. And my experience with this has been that these are a little bit more finicky to use. They're not as easy to adjust. They're not as easy to get used to, especially if you are accustomed to the later style of frog, like what you see on most of the rest of your bench planes. Another downside of the older one is they are prone to breaking off or shearing. So this is what it's supposed to look like right here. That's what the handle actually attaches to. this is what you see very, very common, where it's broken off, and then of course the handle breaks off with it, and then the handle is gone. And the majority, well, maybe not the majority, I'd say better than half of the time when you find a compass plane in the wild, if it's one of these older ones, chances are the handle is going to be gone. And since I'm a parts guy, I can tell you from experience that finding this handle is going to be one of the toughest things that you'll do. So I would even recommend, don't buy a compass plane that doesn't have the handle unless you can get it absolutely dirt cheap. I'm talking like $25 or less if it doesn't have the handle, because the handle itself is going to cost you around $50 or more. And so that's why I say, I mean, maybe you could spend a little bit more than 25, but if you're talking about shipping and all that, I wouldn't spend a whole lot more than that, just because you're going to pay through the nose for the handle. And anybody who's ever had to buy one will attest to that. But again, that's the older style. So we talked about the dial, the different style of frog, talked about the different blade and the different lever cap. A lot of the rest of it is the same. So the body, this adjustment mechanism for the actual sole, for moving that up and down, that's all the same. But we'll talk about some differences here in just a second. So the later models, like I started to show before, have a more typical frog for what you're going to see on most of the rest of the bench planes. And as you can see, they've gone from the single screw design for holding the handle on over to the 2-hole design. So this is actually a non-Stanley handle. This is from one of the many other manufacturers that made compass planes, or maybe even contracted Stanley to make them for them. But you get the idea there. 2-screw design, so much sturdier, much less likely to break off, certainly in use, and really even if the compass plane was to, if your plane was to fall off the bench, and less likely to break. But the reason why I have this one fully extended is because I wanted to show y'all. This actually came up on the Just Plain Fun Parts Division Facebook page, I think, earlier this week. Or maybe it was on another page. But folks were inquiring about how to remove the frog. So you just put your sole all the way open as far as it'll go. Take a nice long screwdriver and just put it in there and loosen that one single screw. Actually, rather take it out is easier. And then the entire frog will just come out as a unit there. And that way you can get it cleaned up, or you can, you know, do whatever it is that you need to do. Most likely you're probably just cleaning it. And naturally for reinstallation, you just do the opposite of that. Another unique thing about the lever caps on the later ones, or another unique thing about the later ones, and then we'll talk specifically about the lever cap. This is the C. If you watch my lever cap videos, you know about this because I used it in there. It's got the C that denotes that it is from a compass plane. And then the type before this one, I believe it's type 9, if I remember right, actually has 113 or 113 there instead. But the reason why I wanted to show this to you is because the compass plane lever cap is actually a little bit longer. So it's going to be the same width as a number 3, but again, the compass plane lever cap is a little bit longer. This one's actually been user modified, or it would probably be even longer still. Definitely have more of an edge there. But that's something to look for, especially if you're out shopping for a new lever cap for your compass plane. You might think, oh, I'll just get one from a number 3. Trust me, it won't work. Well, let's take that back. It'll work, but it will not work as advertised for the original one, because the original one, as you just saw, is longer. And this is probably the most important difference right here, because just like the lever cap, your iron or your blade is going to be the same width as a number 3 as well. So you can actually pull a blade from a number 3 and use it in your compass plane. However, this is the chip breaker or the cap iron for a number 3, and this is not compatible. It will not work. And the reason for that, as you can see, is the spacing is different. So you can see where the yoke or the Y adjusting lever is going to engage this chip breaker. This is going to be your typical or traditional Stanley Bailey bench plane. This is going to be your compass plane. And you can see the distance there, and especially from the opening down to the bottom of it. So this is your compass plane chip breaker. And that's super important if you're out shopping for, or you, especially if you contact me and you say, I need a chip breaker from a compass plane, just know that you have to get that specific one right there. And just so it doesn't go unsaid, because I want to make sure I don't miss this, of the two, the older ones are typically going to be considered more collectible, I think, by most collectors, because the older the better. You know, chances are there's fewer of them. There were fewer made. There's fewer still around. So collectability, the older style is better, and maybe they're even prettier to look at when they're not nasty like this one. So if you're looking for something to sit on the shelf, by all means, get an older one. But if you're looking for one to use, I highly recommend getting the newer style for all those reasons that we just talked about. If nothing else, the handle having 2 screws holding it on, so less likely to break. And then, as much as it pains me to admit it, this is actually my user 113 right here. And as you can see, you know, it's a little different numbering system. They use 0113 because this is Auburn Tool Company around the knob there, and then Ohio, which somebody educate me on that. Weren't Ohio and Auburn kind of in the same, I don't know, realm, in the same company? Somebody educate me on that, because I'm not smart on those particular manufacturers. But this is my user, and the main reason is because of this right here. It's actually got a tapered iron, and this iron is very clearly significantly wider. And when you're talking about doing this type of work, when you're using a compass plane, you definitely want a thicker iron if you can find one, and if you can use one, because it's going to cut down on chatter. And when you're doing a concave or convex surface, you're definitely going to want to control chatter. And yeah, the type of wood you're using is going to make a difference naturally. But I cannot stress it enough. And like I said, it pains me to admit that another plane is superior to a Stanley, but this one is definitely better, and it is definitely preferred for doing this type of work. So I am not an expert boat builder by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have a little bit of experience because I've done some volunteer work at the Waterman's Museum here in Yorktown, Virginia, which is where I live. And I know just enough about this to be dangerous. So boat builders, wooden boat builders that are watching this video, by all means, come in my comments and correct me if I get anything wrong. But, you know, I think folks tend to think that because the front of a boat, you know, narrows together at the bow, people think, oh, well, that's what a compass plane's for, because you have those curved edges. But it's not really what it's used for. So actually, with the compass plane, and the reason why it's associated with boat building, at least as I understand it, is because of what's called spiling. And so there are no straight edges on boats, and that's a common thing that is said among wooden boat builders. But if you think about the planks or the strakes or the freeboards, whatever they're called wherever you're from, when they rise up where the bow comes up, you can't bend wood that way, especially not, you know, a super wide plank or a wide board. And so what boat builders do is they actually shape the wood, and I've cut the groove in this one strictly for the purposes of this video, and it would not actually look exactly like that. It would be similar, but it wouldn't look exactly like that. But just imagine where that board is going forward, or where that groove or curve is going forward. Imagine that was going up toward the bow. And so if I wanted to take my next freeboard or strake or plank, I'm trying to cover everybody here, then it's basically like jointing 2 boards together, except it has a curve in it. And that's where the compass plane comes in handy, and that is called spiling, as I talked about. And so what I need to do is I need to shape these 2 boards in order to go together. So of course I'm going to use a saw in order to get the general shape, and then I'm going to use either a spoke shave or a compass plane or something to that effect in order to join those together, because I want a nice clean joint, because that's going to cut down on the amount of oakum or epoxy or whatever it is that I have to use in order to seal that up and make it watertight. So naturally, this is just one of many applications and places where you can use a compass plane. You might use a compass plane on a regular basis in your day-to-day work. Maybe you're using it to help shape arms when you're doing chair making or something to that effect. Lots and lots of different applications for it, of course, concave and convex surfaces and being able to smooth those out. But I'm just using this as an example so that we can actually show the plane in use. And I think we're actually breaking new ground here, because I'm pretty sure in all my videos this is the first time I've actually shown a hand plane in use. Usually I'm talking about type studies and I'm talking about the best way to find the part you need and things like that. But in this particular case, again, I'm just highlighting what I believe is the best user number 113 or best user compass plane. And so if you can find one of these Auburn Tool Company or Ohio, anything with a thick tapered blade, I do encourage you to go ahead and pick that up. But it's not mandatory. So if all you can find is a Stanley or a King Cutter or whatever other brand, Record, whatever other brand, I'm sure it'll be fine. But if you have an opportunity, if you happen to find one of these, I do encourage you to go ahead and pick it up. And there you have it. That's MJ's take on the 113, the compass plane. If you have different opinions, of course, you're welcome to express those, whether here on YouTube in the comments or on Just Plain Fun, the parts division over on Facebook. If you have any questions about anything, naturally, feel free to ask those as well. And between me and the 3,000 other people that are in the group, I'm sure somebody will have an answer for you. But all in all, compass plane, just a really cool plane to use, really cool plane to have. And as a matter of fact, how about this? Come in the comments and tell me about the last time you used it. Tell me what project you use a compass plane on, because, that'll be cool. But as always, thanks for watching. I appreciate y'all. And thanks for helping us march toward 1,000 subscribers. Y'all are awesome. Best subscribers ever.